Let's get on to our first topic of the day. And our first main topic today gets submitted to us by RazMansReality, who writes, sadly, very early Sunday, we learned that we've lost Aron Eisenberg, who played Nog on Star Trek Deep Space Nine at the far too young age of 50. While the cause of death isn't known yet, he did have 2 kidney transplants in his life. He was so good as Nog. He made the role into one of Trek's best in terms of growth, proving that sometimes it takes a Ferengi to show us the best that humanity can be. Please share your thoughts on this tragic loss. And yeah, for those of you who don't know, Aron Eisenberg, the guy who played Nog, the first ever Ferengi in the Federation on Deep Space Nine, passed away. And, you know, I could talk about that as somebody who has seen the show. But, you know, Rob, you were far more familiar with not only his work, but with him, like you knew him.
Yeah.
Your thoughts on the passing of Eisenberg?
Well, first of all, you know, he was a terrific guy. I was lucky that back in the early aughts, I went to Paris with him, and we were guests at one of the first Star Trek convention they ever had in Paris.
Wow.
Which was a little crazy. But him and Max Grudenchik and Mark Altman and I, because we'd made Free Enterprise, and he was just a delightful guy. But what's really interesting, and a father of 2, which he left us way too early. He always had a smile on his face. He had health problems his whole life. Never, ever got him down. He was always a lot of fun. The last time I saw him was at Star Trek Las Vegas a couple years back. And he always came up and gave me a big hug. And he's definitely will be missed. But I think the legacy that he has on Deep Space Nine, the Ferengi on Next Generation, they didn't really work. And the characters, not so good. They were
very one-dimensional on
very one-dimensional.
Next Generation.
They were conceived as the Yankee traders of space. But on Deep Space Nine, obviously, you had Armin Shimmerman, you had Max Grudenchik, and you had Aron Eisenberg playing this core group of Ferengi, and they fleshed out the characters. They fleshed out the Ferengi race. And Aron Eisenberg was, of course, the first, over the course of the series, he was just Jake's buddy. Then he was the first Ferengi to become a member of Starfleet. And by the time you got to the last season of Deep Space Nine, he lost a limb in the Dominion War. There's an incredible episode. I mean, you watch the episodes where he goes toe-to-toe with Avery Brooks when he demands to be sponsored and allowed to go to Starfleet Command. But by the time you get to season 7, there's the siege of AR 558, I think it's 558 or 559, and then the episode It's Only a Paper Moon, where he's dealing with PTSD. And he was an incredible actor. And that role was really the defining role of his life. And for any actor to leave behind the legacy that he left, I mean, he obviously left us far too early, but his performance of Nog over the 7 seasons of Deep Space Nine is just indelible. And I think anybody who's a Deep Space Nine fan is touched by it's one of the great character arcs in all of Star Trek, to see where he begins and where he winds up. And it's incredible, and I'm sorry he's gone, but we're all the better for the performance of Nog that he brought to 7 seasons of what I think is the finest of the modern Star Trek shows.
Well, I was so glad that you were on the show today to talk about that, because I know you knew him personally, and you know, for me, it's just a very surface thing. That's Deep Space Nine was all I knew him from, but I love the Nog character, and you know, all the Ferengi, whether it's Quark and you know, Quark's brother, Nog's dad, and stuff like that. It was great to see. But anyway, Rob, thank you. I know you post a lot about this on social media.
Yeah, you know, I did go down the rabbit hole, and yesterday I watched. After I did my own show, I probably watched 2 hours of Nog clips on YouTube. And you forget how good of an actor he really was. And remember, he was wearing the fake teeth and the prosthetic giant ears. Yeah. And for an actor to bring a performance as much as he did through all of that makeup, which is daunting for any actor, but he really did a fine job doing it. So.
Yeah, it's going to be interesting to see. I mean, it's been interesting seeing online how that's resonated. Aron, you know, you've worked with people as well, like who have on television shows who have passed away. Obviously, Andy being the big example of that. Like, what does that do? Like, I remember at the time when he passed away, you were still really connected in with the Spartacus fan base around the world. Talk about the feelings you had and what you saw in the fan base and how it affected the fan base when, a character or an actor on one of their favorite shows passes away.
Well, first, I just want to say to Rob, I'm sorry for your loss. I mean, clearly you have had such a connection with him, and just to hear the way that you are speaking about him is so beautiful. And the word that you keep using, and this is true in Andy's case and in the loss of any. I mean, I remember when John Ritter died, who I didn't work with, but I remember the great loss that everyone felt, is that word legacy. And it's one of the things that makes in this world that we work in, this world that we live in, so special and so unique, is that, when Andy passed, and as I'm sure that Rob and many people are feeling about Aron right now, is there's a sense of loss, not just among the people that person knew personally, but also among all the people who had that person in their homes, that allowed them to feel feelings that they maybe couldn't feel in their daily lives. I got messages, and I still continue to get messages of people who said that they cried when Andy passed because they felt like they had lost a friend.
Right.
And actors, specifically television actors, they're not up on a movie screen far away that are unreachable. They're in your home. You see them every, once a week or sometimes more than once a week, and people feel like they have a personal connection to you. And especially if you have a character that has allowed them to in some way live vicariously, that resonates on an even deeper level. So clearly, the legacy, as Rob said, that Aron has left with not only his friends but also with his fans will be felt for many, many years to come. And I look forward to seeing him memorialized at this year's Emmys.
And it's interesting because as a fan base, from a Star Wars point of view, like I remember going to what Aron was saying, like when we found out Carrie Fisher had passed away, I got emotional. Mm-hmm. And I'm like, why the hell am I getting, I never knew Carrie Fisher. I mean, why am I getting emotional? It's because I spent the better part of my childhood hanging out with her in my living room, on my screen in one form or another in the various Star Wars movies. And she was part of me growing up and all that kind of stuff. And I'm sure there's probably a lot of people who Deep Space Nine was that for them, and to find out that Nog has passed away it's always an odd thing for us. I remember when Robin Williams died.
I cried when Elizabeth Taylor died. I cried, and I remember I was working on a project, and this young like 20-something-year-old girl walked in, and she said, "Why are you crying?" I said, "Elizabeth Taylor died today." And she goes, "Oh my gosh, is that a friend of yours?"
Oh man.
And then I cried even harder for like just young actresses in general. But you do feel a loss. But also at the same time, such incredible gratitude for what they've left us with. And that to me is being immortal. That long after we slough off this mortal coil, as Shakespeare says, our work can still live on and continue to inspire people.
To speak to that, the last episode of Deep Space Nine is actually called "What We Leave Behind," and indeed, that's if you look at that show and how that show really developed, to have that as your legacy is pretty great. I mean, I can't imagine a much better legacy for an actor to be part of. And what was so great about that show, it truly was an ensemble.
It was, yeah.
It was a real ensemble. And as the show moved into its 4th, 5th, 6th, and final 7th season, that ensemble just grew. And it's always been sort of the stepchild of Next Generation. But I think now it's really gotten its due. And the acting, and especially Aron Eisenberg's acting, I mean, he was basically playing a goofy character that is not goofy,
but it evolved
of the show. It evolved, and it's just a great example of what the television medium can be.
All right, guys. Well, listen, do you guys have any fond memories of that and thoughts on the passing of Eisenberg and his role as Nog? Did it affect you? Jump on down to the comments section below and leave your thoughts. All right. With that down.